She loved and lost not one, two, or three, but four husbands in the span of 2 years. Suspicious or just bad luck? This is the story of Mary Elizabeth Wilson in our series Ruthless Black Widow Murders #1. Happy Valentine's Day, everyone. So in the spirit of love, I decided to create a series called Ruthless Black Widow Murders, and this is the first of those cases. Mary Elizabeth Cassidy was born on the 11th of June 1989, and she was born into a family of servants, and so she too grew to become a servant. She served at a house called the Knowles family, and she soon became really good friends with John Knowles, one of the sons, and soon they became lovers, and eventually they got married somewhere around 1912 or 1914 and settled in a house in Windy Nook. So Windy Nook is this area, and it gets its name from being a very windy place. So Windy Nook, which earned Mary the title the Merry Widow of Windy Nook. Mary and John were married for more than 40 years, and they had 6 kids together. Usually John would go to work and Mary would stay at home looking after the 6 kids. But eventually John Russell, one of her lovers, moved in with them into the same house. So it seemed like they were into these polyamory stuff, and Mary was the main character or the main partner, and John Russell and John Knowles were her partners, I guess. While John was the husband, John Knowles was the husband, John Russell was the lover, and I think John Knowles, her husband, knew about him if he could move into the apartment with them. So John Russell and Mary stayed at home taking care of the kids while John Knowles, her husband, went to work. So not long after John the lover moved in, John the husband took ill, and it lasted for over 10 months. He was said to have high blood pressure and an enlarged heart, and he was sick for months and eventually died. Mary was obviously so devastated. It took her just 5 months, 5 months, to promote John the lover to John the new husband. So she got married to John somewhere in 1955, just 5 months after her husband died. Mary's new marriage did not last too long, because in 1956, just a couple of months after being married to John Russell, he too took ill, and he was sick for just 1 week before he was pronounced dead. The physician who examined both her husbands said that it was just natural causes, and they had died from a muscular issue, an enlargement of their heart. So it was just like natural causes that caused their death. And after the death of both men, Mary inherited a whopping sum of 42 pounds. Which turns to about £1,000 in today's money, which is about $1,000 and a couple of $100. In late 1956, just a couple of months after Mary's husband had died, there was this guy, Oliver Leonard, and he met a couple who owned a cafe, and he said their business was doing really good, so they should move to a bigger place. And he lent them some money to be able to move to the new place that they're going to move to. And when they moved there, they also moved their cafe there, and he lived in the new big rented space with them, and he paid them back the money. And Mary was a regular customer to that cafe, so when they moved, she obviously moved with them, and she was talking with the cafe owner, and they had this discussion. So I'll probably presume that the cafe owner had told Mary about how they got the new place and how Oliver had lent them some money to be able to achieve moving to this new place. And Mary told her, okay, do you think he's wealthy? And she was like, yeah, he has some money. And Mary was like, okay, can I see him? Because he was a tenant in that place. And so she was like, okay, fine. Probably thinking, oh, Mary is single and she can do whatever she wants, especially because she has so poorly lost 2 of her husbands. So soon Mary and Leonard became really close friends, and soon Leonard was like, you know what, I'd rather be with Mary than be a tenant here. So they decided to make it official. I'm not sure if it's in September of 1956 or in June of 1957. Those were the 2 dates that I kept seeing. So after being married, Oliver and Mary decided to move into their own apartment, and they lived together. And just a couple of days after their actual wedding, Mary went to see a life insurance agency to try and get a life insurance policy for her dearly beloved husband. But they were like, okay, he's too old and they won't be able to ensure his life at this point. So Mary was unable to get that. So a couple of days after that visit, Oliver suddenly started feeling sick, and he was so bad so fast he decided to go see his doctor. And the doctor was like, he had no idea what was wrong with him, and given that Oliver had had such good health for such a long time, it was just a little weird that he was getting sick. And so the doctor just gave him some cough medications. 2 days after visiting his doctor, Oliver's condition became a lot worse and he fell off his bed. So Mary invited some neighbors to come over, and they had seen him fall off. Like, people are here witnessing everything. So Mary made a cup of tea and gave one of the neighbors who was visiting to give that tea to Oliver. When he just took a first sip of it, he spat it out and made sure he threw the cup away, and he still struggled on the bed, which to me registers that Mary giving someone else to do it, to give him the cup of tea, meant that in front of everybody, if she tried to give Oliver that tea herself, he was probably going to not take it, and it's going to ring a bell to everyone else. And him throwing it out immediately he tasted it was just like, okay, she made it again. And by this time, he had probably started figuring out that his tea had been poisoned by Mary or something. Next day, Mary called another set of neighbors somewhere around early morning, and this time Oliver's condition was really, really worse, and the neighbors felt like, this guy is dying, please call the doctor. And they probably left at some point, and Mary, she just thought about it because she took her sweet little time, and the doctor arrived there by midday, and by the time the doctor arrived, Oliver was already dead. To me, I think maybe she probably waited till like he was taking like his last breaths, and she was like, oh my gosh, doctor, can you come over? Oliver was indeed an old man, so the doctor did not think too much of it, and he found no foul play, and Oliver was pronounced dead just 12 days after marrying Mary. After Oliver's death, Mary inherited a whopping 50 pounds, which is about 1,200 pounds, which translates to about $1,500. So as of now, 3 of those guys have died, and she has inherited almost $2,000. Everyone is innocent until proven guilty. So let's say Mary was innocent at this point. You would think that after 3 of her husbands dying so quickly, she's going to slow down and probably live in the moment and enjoy the money she had gotten from that. Mary was looking for like love, and so she was looking for her next love, which led her to her new husband, Wilson. Ernest Wilson was the full package. He was 76, which is like the right age, almost moving towards death. In Mary's mind, that's not me talking. And he also had life insurance, he had some cash, and he owned a bungalow. So Mary started living at his bungalow, and soon the two started a relationship. I mean, it already worked so far. Why change it? And soon after that, their relationship led into marriage in early 1957. At the registry of the wedding, Mary asked the registrar for a discount because, come on, this was her 4th wedding and she thinks she deserves it. And during the wedding reception, Wilson was entertaining the guests, playing the piano, and one of Mary's friends asked her that there was a lot of food. What are you going to do with all this leftover cake and sandwiches? Mary just smiled and told her, keep it for the funeral, which is like wickedly funny, but it was not something that sat well with people, especially given her situation. I think I would make such a joke, but given her situation, it was too realistic to be making such a joke about it. And the funny part is, Wilson also laughed. Not long after their marriage, Ernest took ill, and on the day Ernest died, Mary was a little fishy. So she had spent the night at a neighbor's house. She had gone to the neighbor's house, told Grace was this neighbor, told her, hey, her husband is really badly ill today, and she just wished that she could sleep at her house. And so she slept there. She told her that the doctors had attended to him. So she went and slept over at Grace's house. And in the morning, Grace accompanied her back to her house, and she gave her the keys to be the first one to open the doors. But when Grace opened the door, she was stunned by Ernest's lifeless body lying down on the kitchen table. And personally, I believe that that guy might have died before Mary even went to sleep at that neighbor's house, and she just wanted like another witness to be the person to find her dead husband. And later that afternoon, she went back to the bungalow and she told the manager there that Ernest was still sick and was being treated by a doctor, which makes no sense because the guy had already died. So after the funeral, Mary was actually too busy to attend his funeral, so she did not. And she had actually joked again to the undertaker that since she's bringing him so much business, he should consider giving her a discount. Ernest's physician ruled his death as natural causes, and he also noted that he had died because his heart was not acting right, the muscles they were swelling or stuff like that, which is just similar to everything that had happened to Mary's previous husbands. But now the people around her felt really suspicious about her jovial behavior and her not attending his funeral and the morbid jokes that she had previously made. So people started calling the police, people were gossiping, and people called the police to be like, they are not sure that all of this were just natural. And the police decided to take action after a lot of calls had reached them. The bodies of her third and fourth husband were exhumed. That's Oliver Leonard and Ernest Wilson. While this time, after Ernest's death, Mary had inherited a whopping 100 pounds, which is almost like 2 times what she had inherited so far. So in total, Mary had inherited just a little over $4,500. When both bodies were exhumed, 1/30th and 1/80th of phosphorus was found in their stomachs and in their intestines, which shows that they had ingested something that contained white phosphorus. Also, another substance that was found was wheat brown, and white phosphorus and wheat brown were both substances that were in a rat poison concoction that was made in those days. With that said, Mary was obviously arrested and charged with the murders of her last 2 husbands, and Mary's reaction to that was no comment. The trial started and the jury was made up of 9 men and 3 women, and all Mary said throughout the trial was that men like her and she likes men, so yeah. And Mary's defense lawyers were trying to bring up the point that Mary did not poison them with phosphorus poisoning, but the guys had poisoned themselves because they were trying to take sexual stimulants which contained phosphorus at that time. But they were disproven because the type of phosphorus found in the sexual stimulants was totally different from what was found in beetle, cockroach, or rat poisons, which was white phosphorus. And also, the brown wheat that was found in their system can only be found in one of these poisons. So they could prove that Mary had murdered both guys by phosphorus poisoning. It took the jury just 1 hour and 15 minutes to decide that Mary was guilty and she was sentenced to death to be hanged. Because Mary was advanced in age, they decided to not put her to death and instead change her sentence to life in prison. While she was in prison, they exhumed the body of John Knowles and John Russell and found out that they also died of phosphorus poisoning. And because the trial was already over, they did not feel like going through the whole thing again, especially because she was going to spend the rest of her life in prison. On December 5th of 1962, while serving some time in prison, Mary Elizabeth Cassidy Knowles Russell Leonard Wilson died. She had lived a really good life and she maintained her innocence till the end, and her friends said she still had a very high spirit until she died. So what do you guys think about the case? I feel like it's so sad that these guys' lives were cut short just because Mary wanted to make a few bucks. And I mean, 4 guys died for less than $5,000. It's so sad. Well, that was it for me today, guys. Remember to leave your comments below if you have a good suggestion of a Black Widow case, and be the best version of yourself because changing the world starts with you. And goodbye.